You're welcome to the Sisters Empowerment Show. Like we promised, we have a number of things to present to you. Today, we are going to present to you tips on how to prepare for businesses and employment, both in the formal and informal sector. Today, I'm hosting, as usual, the one and only Daisy. She's here. She's going to share with us ideas and tips on how we can prepare ourselves for businesses. You're most welcome, Daisy.
Thank you, Lillian.
Yes, you have to tell us, the viewers out there are eager to know what is it that they should prepare for, what should they have, first and foremost, when it comes to preparation for employment in the formal sector. Our students that have completed school and want to join employment or the labor market, how best can they prepare themselves to get employment and be employable in the different sectors within the various organizations, especially in Uganda today? Thank you, Daisy.
Okay, Lillian, I'm happy for you bringing out this topic. And before we go on and we tell our viewers about the tips that they should know and practice for business, both in the formal and the informal sector, we want to inform you that this show is proudly sponsored by Save and Have Enterprises, located at Ham Shopping Center, and we welcome you to come to that shop for various items, including some of what you see us putting on, children's items, and many more items. In addition, we also have another sponsor of this show, and that is St. Daniela Education Services, which is located in Namayumba Town Council off Busunju Road. So we welcome you to bring your children from primary 1 to primary 7, and those of you who have those young children from the ages of 3 to 6, you can bring them to our kindergarten, and that is from the baby class, middle class, and top class. We want to thank our sponsors and welcome more sponsors for this program. So Lillian, you already asked me for some of those tips that we need to consider or we need to share with our viewers. As we go on with this topic, I want to make it clear that it does not only apply to those who have just finished their jobs, because seeking for jobs is a daily thing it is something that even people who are already in employment will always want to learn something new. Although our focus is going to be so much on the people who are seeking employment for the first time, but even those ones in employment, you may pick one or two lessons from the session we are having today. I have to admit and inform you that the basis of this first part of the program is going to be about the formal sector. And when we talk about the formal sector, our main focus is going to be about those who are seeking employment in businesses like companies, in ministries, in corporations, in the formal kind of setting where people apply for jobs, and then you are under certain rules and regulations that are already stipulated, and then you have to follow these rules and regulations. So this is the kind of setting we are talking about when we refer to formal employment. And then the other segment, that is part 2, will cater for the informal sector. And when we talk about the informal sector, usually it is things to do with self-employment, all kinds of employment that do not require you to go through a formalized system. So I'll start by giving some of my few points or considerations. First and foremost, when you are looking for the job, know what kind of job you are trying to look out for. When we finish school, most times we always lay our strategies and we are looking for particular kinds of employment. That is very good, but considering the employability status in Uganda, sometimes our dreams are never fulfilled. So because of that, we end up getting into different sectors, some of which we did not go to school for, so you just end up picking any employment so that you are kept busy. That notwithstanding, however, as long as you are in the informal sector. These are some of the key attributes that you must consider in order for you to keep yourself successfully in this job, whether it's the kind of job that you have qualified for or not. But once you have accepted to take it on, you must try to comply and live within the descriptions of the job. So the first thing to consider is the kind of qualifications you hold. Before you go out to look out for a job, first look into your academic qualifications, all the kind of qualifications you have. They may not be academic qualifications, but there might be other kinds of qualifications you have acquired, maybe due to experience. Because some jobs in the formal sector do not require you to have academic qualification, but they require you to have the experience. So either look at your experience or your academic qualifications. Make sure that they rhyme with the kind of job that you are going to do. Okay, there are instances where you may be misemployed, and when I talk about misemployment, you might find that it's kind of a job mismatch. You started to be a dentist, but you end up being a receptionist in a certain job, company. So some of these principles may not really apply to you fully, but still some of them will apply to you. So do not use your qualification above your job. Like, just use your qualification to make sure that you suit within the job environment and that you will put your qualifications to use. Or if you're considering your experience that you have, for example, you may be a cleaner in an office. Look at the kind of experience you've had and what you are doing, and ensure that it matches with the job description that you are applying for, or the job you are applying for, so that when you get there, you are doing what is expected of you. So that is something very important, but I must put it clearly that there is a tendency for youth out there who are looking for jobs to always look at their academic qualification as number one and topmost in everything they do. When they go to their jobs, even if they have accepted to take on the job, they will always put their qualifications ahead of anything. If their boss or supervisor tells them something, they will say, after all, me, I'm not even qualified to do this. At that point in time, once you accept to do this job, whether those are the qualifications you are taking on or not, since you're allowed to take on this job, do not put your job qualifications at the top of everyone or at the top of your job. So that is something very important, Lillian. I don't know whether you have anything to add on to that.
Okay, I wanted you to clearly give the reality of things. How does someone get to respond to maybe a job advert? What is it in practical sense? For instance, if in the newspapers there is a job advert and they need certain qualifications, you can give an example of a qualification. It can be in medicine, social science, social work. What is it that someone who has acquired that academic qualification that they will look out for, give the practicability of it, or then the various steps that they can take to right from seeing the advert, then applying, and that whole process.
Okay.
Just and differentiate for someone to clearly understand that.
Now, I'm going to use an example of what really applies to me. Being a lawyer, I'm going to use the example of a lawyer. Now, assuming you are a law student who has finished school and are out there looking for a job, then you find a job advert placed in the newspaper calling for a lawyer or requiring for a legal officer. What will you be required to do? The first thing I would always advise people who find job adverts is to write down, to first read all the job requirements, the full job advert, and understand it carefully. Read every requirement one by one and establish whether you satisfy all those requirements. And once you are also satisfied to to your ability, to the best of your ability, that you qualify or you as the suitable candidate for this job. Then the next thing I would advise you is to put together all your academic qualification, all your experiences, all your certificates, and all other supporting relevant documents that you think will help support your application together. Then the next thing is to start writing your application. I always advise people that when you write an application, try to read it over and again. And if you have friends who you think they are more qualified or are more experienced in this job sector, you can ask them to read through your job your job application. Now, as you're writing your job application, these are things that are really obvious, but I want to tell you that you must always indicate your name at the topmost right of the document you are writing on. First of all, before you start writing an application, make sure the paper you are writing on is very clean, and the pen you're using is a good pen and it can easily be read. Then secondly, make sure that your handwriting is good, of course for those who cannot use computer. But now that we have computers in place, you may choose to write using a computer. So as you write your application, make sure you write your name, you write your address, you write your telephone contact and your email, because email is now the way to go. Most of these employers use emails to either receive or respond to your application. So I would advise you to include all your details, and this should be valid records. Make sure you do not skip a line or do not skip a letter or number in your telephone contact or skipping a letter in your email address. So make sure everything is right, because most of these employers, when they are getting back to you, they get back to you using the contacts you have supplied to them. That is one thing you must consider. Make sure you address it properly to the organization you are applying to. And when I talk about this, I mean read the advert and ensure you know who you're supposed to submit your application to. Sometimes they'll tell you, submit your application through, and then they give you the address. Copy it very well and put it on the left-hand side of your application letter. Then you go to write your application. The reference is application for the job of legal officer, because I'm now using the example of a legal officer. And make sure that it is clear you're applying for a legal officer, because in some adverts, the advert will run like 4 or 5 positions, different positions. It might be running, asking for a driver, a legal officer, a communication analyst, and maybe an ICT specialist. So if you do not clearly indicate, then you will miss out, because the employers do not have time to look out exactly what you are applying for. So make sure what you're applying for is very clear in your application. Then go on to state how you got to know about this vacancy. For example, you say, I'm writing in reference to the above subject matter, which appeared in the New Vision of 23rd October 2019, for example. Because sometimes it is important for you to make reference to where you got this vacancy. Because most times, even you, as you go to prepare for your interview, if you have been shortlisted, it will help you visit that particular advert to read through the job requirements. Then in your application, you go on to tell them what you have, like why are you applying? Why do you think you are suitable for this job? That I'm either a female adult Ugandan, aged this, if you feel comfortable, and I'm now currently employed as this. You state what you are doing at this point in time, and then that you have an academic qualification that suit the advert or the position for which you're applying, which are here to attached. You may not go into the details of writing all your academic qualifications, because there are other supporting documents that I've talked about have to attach to your application form. Then, and that you await to hear from them. Then you conclude by signing. So briefly, that is what an application letter should be like. Do not talk about your love life, your marriage life, your those funny stories, how you've traveled where, how, you know, some of those things are not very relevant in the application. And actually, the employer does not have time to read through a very long application letter with irrelevant information. So, generally, your application letter should be in position to fit on one page. And I must say that an application letter is really different from a cover letter. Today I'm not going to speak about the cover letter. I don't know whether you would want me to speak about it. But the application letter is usually brief because whatever you are referring to is going to be explained in your resume or the CV, what we call a CV, curriculum vitae. So make sure that you have a rich curriculum vitae that explains everything, that even if you were not called and the employer looks at your CV, they would be in position to make out who you are. Because your CV will contain all the information that you have. All your profile will be in your CV. So make sure you draft out your CV in a manner that sells you. Do not write things that don't help you. Of course, sometimes people say they want to talk about their marital status. I'm just giving an example of one thing that people may consider to be relevant in certain instances, and other instances it's not helpful. A marital status might be useful in most employments, but in some employments it might not be useful. However, most times it is good to indicate it, yeah? But there are other things that are really so much irrelevant to the job application. As you apply for your job, those are some of the things you need to look out for. Ensure that you have attached all your documents. For example, if you're speaking about your academic qualifications, make sure you have attached your transcript, your certificates, and these must be stamped, verified by your academic institution that you qualified from. Make sure you have all the other supporting documents like the CV. If you have any other certificates that are not academic but will put some more weight on your application, attach them too. Yeah, because you may not have any other opportunity to present them. Actually, as we go virtual, you might find that the employer will not even have time to invite you for the interview. They may just have to go through your academic qualifications and then look at the attached documents and decide there and then. Then some employers really just actually look out, has she attached this, like they tick and see. If you have missed out on anything, they don't have time because they have a multitude of applications, and you know jobs are very competitive. So make sure you're not thrown out because you have missed out on just attaching. For example, they've asked you for your national ID in the advert to prove that you are a Ugandan, and you miss on attaching your national ID. So they'll dump your application in the trash bin because no one has time to find out whether you have a national ID since it was a requirement.
Okay. Now, you can also guide us after I have prepared my application form and the letter plus the attachments. You may tell the viewers what kind of documents. Do they submit original documents? Those attachments, should they be original? Then, if someone is to, assuming the application letter or is supposed to be delivered at a certain organization, what do you recommend? Should I send someone because I'm too busy, or I just do not want to walk there to that organization? Then even how do I package my application letter? Do I fold it? Do I, how must it be presentable? So help our viewers to clearly understand how best they must prepare, how best they can deliver that transition stage from home or office to the employer. What is it? What should it be like?
Okay. Now, I'm going to discuss this in two parts. There is the delivery, personal delivery at offices, and then I'm going to also speak about the e-delivery. That is like by email or online delivery. The online delivery is very easy. After you have written out your application, the only thing to ensure is that you are meeting the deadline, submitting before deadlines for all applications, whether personally delivered or delivered on online, but also ensuring that the application has been submitted and has been accepted, especially if you're using email. You have to double check and see that it has been submitted. Sometimes you have to check in your sent mail to ensure that it has gone. Other times you give it about 20 minutes. If it has bounced back, for example, you might have missed out maybe on a hyphen or a full stop in the email address, then it will bounce back. So you really have to make sure that you cross-check after 20 to 30 minutes after sending your document or application using online application. Because sometimes you can be damn sure that you have submitted it and you don't check again, and before you know it, for example, the following day, they are telling you that it didn't bounce back because the address does not exist. And you know, with emails, it is very easy to make these errors. You might omit on a letter or a punctuation and then it bounces back. So I must warn you very much, because this is the way now to go. Most of these applications are going to be sent online. Make sure that you are writing the email well and properly, and that you're cross-checking that that is the right email that you're sending to. And even after sending to that email, make sure that you cross-check after about 30 minutes or 40 minutes that the email has actually been sent. And also, for those ones who are submitting online, ensure that all the attachments have been well attached in a manner that has been prescribed. For example, they might tell you, submit them as PDF documents. Make sure that you have attached your files in a PDF form. Or if they have told you to zip them, or they have given you a description that they should not exceed 40 MBs. They normally describe these kinds of ways in which you're supposed to submit the attachments. That is why I'm insisting that before you submit your application, you have to make sure that you reread the advert and ensure that you are following it. Sometimes, for those ones who are using emails and online applications, the applications are online, are on a certain website. Make sure that you have written down that website, so next time you are visiting that website, you're not looking for it again all afresh, wasting a lot of time trying to look which one was the website from which I got this advert. That is also very important. But it is also applicable to those ones who are going to deliver online, to ensure that you write down the dates on which the advert appeared, such that if you want to refer to it in future, because some employers get back to you after many months, you have forgotten even which date that advert ran, but you really want to use it. But also, for those ones who buy newspapers, or who know people who buy newspapers, it is a very good practice when you apply for a job to keep that advert. Pick out that page of the newspaper and keep it. If it is online, print out that job description and keep it. Have a file. Actually, I advise people that every time you start on the job application process, have a file. That is one. But two, have your documents ready all the time, both in printed form and in a scanned form. As I've told you that we are going to now start using this e-system, like we are going to do a lot of online applications nowadays, I would advise everyone who has finished school to have all their academic documents. Even if you get a certificate today from a training and you feel you will use it, scan that document and save all your documents, for example, in a folder. For those who have emails, you can use Google Drive and save them there. Those ones who do not have emails, I would advise you to get emails, or to save your documents on a flash or any kind of external application. These are very small things that people might think are irrelevant, but Lillian, I must give you an example. There are instances when you see a job advert and, for example, you are in the field. You cannot reach your papers, the physical papers, and maybe the job deadline is going to fall when you have not returned, for example. And you really feel you qualify for this job. If you have all your documents scanned and stored, for example, on Google Drive, it will be very easy for you to retrieve those documents and prepare your application and send it without any problem of, like, you have to call people, board a taxi or a bus, bring for me my documents, and then meanwhile you're incurring costs and wasting a lot of time. Yeah? So that is an issue that you must look into. But also now, for people who are going to deliver your applications physically, for example, to an office, the advert says, deliver physically, all address them to, and then they give you the address. Make sure that you know where you're going to deliver. Sometimes people may use post office, but I know these days people want to hand deliver their applications because most of these job venues are reachable. And sometimes I would also advise you to adventure by knowing the location of the place you're applying for. For example, if they tell you you're going to apply for a job at St. Daniela Education Services, and I've told you that it is in Namayumba, and you feel you may be the qualified teacher we are looking for, it would be a very good idea after writing your application to find out where St. Daniela is. You board a taxi and go to Namayumba and find out exactly where it is. Sometimes it gives you an impression of the kind of job the job place you are looking for. Will you like it? It gives you an impression for you to decide even before you go further. Is this the place I'm applying for? Is this the place I want to be in? Is it accessible? Such that even when you are shortlisted and invited for the interview, you know how much time do I need to prepare to get there? What do I need to get there? Is it accessible? Am I going to jump onto a motorcycle to get there if you're not driving? If you're driving, which routes should I use? Because on that very day of the interview, if you take, for example, public means, it might take you longer and you get to the interview venue late. So these are all things that will prepare you, will help you appreciate further where you're taking your application. And at the point of delivery, ensure that you have delivered to the right office and to the right officer by making sure that you are signing. Most of these employers after passing their adverts, allocate a particular officer at their office to receive these applications, and they will acknowledge receipt. Make sure that you sign that book and know that your application has reached.
And then also the delivery part of it. How should it appear if I'm hand delivering? Should I put in a polythene bag? Should I just hand pick from my handbag and the papers are just open? So basically, how should we package?
Lillian, I think in this day and era, everyone can afford an A4 envelope. And even if you understand that, I think that is an envelope of about 500 shillings. I don't know how much that is in other currencies, but at least you know that is something that is affordable. 500 shillings, you buy a brown envelope, and most of these shops have these envelopes. You make sure that you do not fold your applications and the supporting documents. I mean, you have to look professional. You have to give an impression to your employer that you are smart. Make sure the envelope is not folded. You know, sometimes you try to fold your papers and documents and look so disorganized. So this is the time for you. This is the first impression you're giving to your employer. The papers that have been printed should be clean. They should not have you know, sometimes water may pour on them as maybe it's raining and you're taking your application and then it has rained on the supporting documents and you just put them in an envelope and just drop them there. No. Make sure that your papers are legible, they can easily be read, and they are in good status. And they are delivered in an envelope with an address to where you are delivering these documents.
Okay. Then also at the time of delivering, should I dress up like I'm going to be interviewed, or just I take it as if whatever kind of attire I'm putting on, after all I'm just delivering the application? What do you advise?
Me, as a person who has looked for jobs and knowing the fact that you never know who you meet, for example, if you're delivering your application, I would always advise you to be decent and smart. Because the person you are meeting may be on your way to delivering your application, might be your next boss. And therefore you must present yourself ready at all times, because as I've already told you, the first impression matters. I'll give you an example. They are looking, for example, for a legal officer. You cannot come dressed in your pants, all shorts, even if you're not yet employed. Because if someone gets to know you, for example, they will ask you, who are you? I'll give an example. There is a place, I'll not mention the name, I delivered my application to. But in addition to delivering it, I was supposed to fill in a form, which was equivalent to an application form. And the time I spent sitting in that office where I was told to sit and fill in that form, very many people kept coming into the office. And resultantly, the person who gave me the form looked at the form and at myself. And he gave me a positive attitude. He was like, I think from the people who have applied, you are one of the most suitable person for this job. This alone, like, inspired me. And I was like, because I was presentable, I went with my documents, I was confident. I did not like go there looking suspicious. I'm not so sure whether I want the job or not. Because I mean, you have to be zealous, not overzealous, but I mean, you have to show that you are ready to work with this organization. And actually, when you deliver your application and you're smart, sometimes it gives you opportunity to ask around about the organization. You may ask about the core values, the objectives, the kind of environment that is around. Otherwise, sometimes if you go in a suspicious manner, people may just look at you and tell you, drop it there and go. And then you miss out on getting opportunities, maybe to interact with people to tell you more about the job. Yeah.
Okay, our viewers, this is the Sisters Empowerment Show. Please do not forget to subscribe, like, comment, share. We are here today. Well, we have a lot for you. So that was what happens at the time from the time we get to know of the job adverts and you're looking for a job and what steps are taken. Then from that stage, we are going to look at, now that you submitted your application, of course we expect the employer to also do their part. So at the time of the employer now having a number of people that have submitted, and then they have to shortlist who does what, who goes for this position. So you realize that you may be one of those that will be shortlisted for the first interview. Now we are going to pick it from there. What happens at the time when you're shortlisted? What should you do? How do you prepare? And now, definitely, if you're shortlisted, you're expected to go for the first interview. It may be a written interview, it may be an oral interview, at whatever level it is. Some organizations have 2 interviews, others it's spot on. They need the person there and then at the point of the interview. But as the person who has applied and is shortlisted, what should we do? How should we advise our viewers out there that have been successful first time and are shortlisted for the interview and the date is set? How should somebody prepare for this?
Okay. As I go to answer your question, Lillian, I must also tell our viewers there that you must keep your phone contacts available all the time, because you might be shortlisted and these days they reach you using the telephone contact, and then your telephone is not available. Then other times they reach you using email and you're one person who does not check your emails. So I'd like to advise our viewers out there, when you start on this venture of looking for jobs, make sure that you are active on your email, you have active addresses, and that your phone contacts are really in work and in use. So assuming that the employers have fairly done their duty, discharged it very well, and considered you to be one of the successful applicants, what should you do? What are you expected? Now, I know there are several kinds of interviews, but I'm going to try to focus on particular ones. Sometimes they are written, but I'm going to focus so much, I think, on the oral interviews, because for the written, all you need is to prepare yourself. First of all, make sure you get your invitation letter, the letter inviting you for the interview, and know what they want. Because usually they will communicate to you the time and what you're required to do and what you're required to present. For example, they will tell you the interview will take place at Sheraton Hotel, ballroom, room this. So if you do not receive your invitation letter, you'll miss out on all this information. 2, it will tell you to come with your original documents. I forgot to tell you that when you're submitting your application, do not submit your original